not handled a particular way, and that is true. So, and we're at the center of it. Your tax dollars are at the center of it. So let's talk about war and peace, because with this truth that we have all been so excited about, it's been you know wonderful to see people coming home and all of that. Um, Now, you hear Israel say, okay, once the truce is over, we're going to really expend more force than we did before. Wow. And then people who try to return home to northern Gaza, at least two of those persons have been killed. The IDF are shooting at them. And now we hear about the treatment of many of the hostages, Pastor Stephen Thurston. And the hostages, they've not had a lot of food. They've not been able to bathe. Well, now they're being treated like Gazans, because
Mm.
Gazans can't bathe. Gazans are rationed food before October 7th. They were allotted a certain number of calories per person. This has got to stop, everybody. So call me at 773-763-9278. Let me know what you think. How can we get peace? Do we want more war? Or do we want peace now? Peace now. Not just a ceasefire, but a negotiated peace. Israeli security, justice for the Palestinians. Are we going to get that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And in the midst of everything else, we're going to have John Nichols. John Nichols is going to talk to us about this, about the UAW deal. Well, remember we were talking about that a few weeks ago? Well, yeah, we were talking about it because it's a real big deal. They won they won a lot of concessions from the victory. A lot of concessions. What did they win? And is this a revival of the union movement, which impacts all of us because we're all workers? So at least most of us are. So call me at 773-763-9278. Hey, Jewel. Hey, Kenneth. Hey, is it Lenny or Bob that I see up here? Yes, and Raphael, and sending you all so much love today. Everybody like and share. Jewel up in New York, like and share, like and share, like and share, everybody. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. It's going to be really ground central for the DNC coming up next summer. It'll be upon us before we know it. And then, of course, AM 950 radio. My Minnesota family, y'all need to come down here because you all are getting down up in Minnesota with Ilhan Omar. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Call me at 773-763-9278. Do you want more war or do you want peace? And Americans have a great say in this because it is our tax dollars. It is our tax dollars that are pushing so much of this. And so I want you to tell me what your thoughts are. What about the Bears last night? They actually pulled it out over the Vikings 12-10. Congratulations to them. Even though on CNN they called the game a dud. Look, I'll take the win. I'll take it. I'll take it. Let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Israel and Hamas agreed to extend a pause in fighting by 2 days. The pause, which went into effect on Friday, would have expired today without yesterday's agreement, and it could be extended even further. More women and children are set to be released from captivity in the Gaza Strip in exchange for Palestinian women and children held in Israeli prisons. Most of them have been held without charge. 150 Palestinians, 51 Israelis, and 18 foreign nationals have been released thus far. A man pleaded guilty to shooting students of Palestinian descent in Vermont. A 48-year-old man. It's very interesting. They do not really talk about it. They don't give you his name. Yeah, but he did it. And he was charged with 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder. Why is it just second degree? The victims remain in intensive care after Saturday's shooting, and they are expected to recover. Send love and prayers to the president, President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosa. And of course, they will have a tribute service today. President Biden and all of our living first ladies will attend, former first ladies will attend. It will be held at a church at Emory University in Atlanta. And Biden and Vice President Harris, the president and the vice president, will be there. And God bless her and this magnificent life that this woman led. And New Zealand is abandoning a plan to ban smoking. Did you know that scientists discovered a new type of stem cell in the spine? And Stephen Colbert, send your love to him, everybody. His appendix burst, so he had to cancel shows. Sending him much love today. As I shared with you, we had a win last night, Chicago. 12-10 over the Vikings. Sorry, Minneapolis, but we'll take them where we can. You all are 6-6. We're 4-8. NBA. The Bulls will be playing Boston tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, of course, 7:30 on the East Coast. And the Thunder will be playing the Timberwolves at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. In the NHL, Chicago will be playing tonight along with the Wild. And those are some of the headlines. Pastor Stephen Thurston, I'm going to put you on mute so that I can sneeze and download some stories.
No problem. Hey, everybody.
You are on mute and you have a caller.
Well, today I want to encourage us to kick the elephant out the room. Now, when you're dealing with a hard situation, the difference between feeling how you feel on the inside and look on the outside, it can really be huge. Inside, you may be emotionally crumbling or feeling sadness, fear, or even some grief, but outside, you're just as happy as go lucky as could be. You're probably familiar with the expression, ignoring the elephant in the room, as it describes the way people avoid talking about huge, impossible to overlook, or difficult situations. The reality is that sometimes people who care about us avoid addressing painful topics because they don't know what to say or they don't want to upset us. But sometimes we're the ones staying quiet because we're worried about burdening people with our pain or making them feel uncomfortable. While ignoring the elephant might cut down the chances of an awkward moment, silence in the face of suffering isn't neutral. It carries a physical and emotional cost, leaving us worn down and isolated. But the good news is that you don't have to carry your burdens alone or in silence. Decades of research show that social support helps people manage stress and recover from trauma. So as we move to the close of this year, maybe there's some stuff that you need to deal with, clear up, or even clear out. Maybe there are a few elephants that have been taking up way too much space in the room and now need to be kicked out. Well, here's some steps that you can take to make that happen. Number one, open up and name the elephant. You may find it hard to talk about a matter that's involved with your pain or fear, and that's okay. I get that. Many hard conversations, though, start with awkward openings. The key thing is to keep in mind that admitting that there's an elephant in the room is the first step to kicking it out. So how do you do it? That's probably the question that you're asking right now. I got you. Great question. Glad you asked. Well, if you're ready to talk, there's several ways to get the conversation started. Here's some examples. I've been having a hard time. Are you up for talking about how I've been feeling? If it's in person that's troubling you because it's overwhelming, how about trying an email, a text, or a call, at least just to kick the conversation off? That separation may help you to feel more in control of the depth and the pace of the conversation. And if someone opens the door to a conversation where you're just not ready to have a conversation, it really is okay to say that you're not up for talking at that particular moment, but acknowledge the fact that it makes you feel better that they brought it to you, and let them know that you're willing to listen to what they have to say, just not right now. The second option for you is to seek out an opener. Yeah, I call it an opener because some people are easier to talk to than others. Santita just happens to be one of my openers. Mm-hmm. These are people that make it easy to talk about anything you're facing. They make it easy because they have love, care, and compassion. There's no judgment, no condemnation when you bring your stuff to them. Look for somebody who loves asking questions. They feel comfortable with strong emotions. And again, they listen to you without judgment. And don't be afraid to look outside your immediate circle for this particular individual. I've discovered that sometimes the best support comes from those who you're not necessarily the closest with. And thirdly, finally, Seek people with shared or similar experiences. If you don't feel ready to talk to friends or family or your close inner circle yet, or even the person that you may be having an issue with, consider reaching out to people who know about the elephant in the room, people who face the same challenge and can offer compassion. Like the person that they brought you in to train you, and then you ended up taking their job from them, and then they got
Oh,
fired shortly thereafter. You might want to have a conversation because they know some stuff that you don't know and can prepare you for a situation that you're going to soon find yourself in. If you don't know anyone who's faced what you're facing, consider a support group. They're easy to find. Everybody's got Google. Jump on there. They exist for virtually every type of hardship. And if you're not comfortable connecting with strangers, I get it. That's okay. You got also the option of engaging with books or podcasts or maybe even a YouTube video or TED Talk that focus on the issue at hand. Trust me, somebody has been where you are or about to go or have been. They've got the hat, the T-shirt, and the backpack to prove it. Sometimes just knowing that others have experienced the same hardship as you can really help us to feel less alone. Kicking the elephant out of the room doesn't mean that you have to share all of your feelings or make yourself vulnerable to people who don't make you feel supported. Even with those who make you feel heard, there may be days when you'd rather sit in comfortable silence, and guess what? That's okay. You can take it day by day or hour by hour. Opening the door to a hard conversation is often the most difficult step in this process. Once everyone has acknowledged that there is an elephant in the room, it becomes much easier to start coaxing it out the door. My encouragement to you, my challenge to you today is to go ahead and start the process of evicting that elephant out of your room.
Pastor Thurston, I want to thank you for that. Because,
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
been, several of my friends have made their transitions lately. It's sometimes, and so it's happened so frequently. I'm just at a loss right now.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just at a loss. When I was at Joshua Farrakhan's service on Saturday, I was at a loss. Like, this is someone I've
yeah,
known a long time. And then I find out, you know, Denise Lewis, Ramsey Lewis's daughter, who I lived next door to since I was a child,
yeah,
she's passed just a couple of weeks ago. It's just like I'm at a loss. I mean, I like
yeah.
Bobby Frame, Dawn. What do I say to you? Mustafa, Donna, BJ. What do I? I mean, what do I don't even know. Ah,
Yep.
and
It's
sometimes,
just trauma on top of trauma.
yeah, but you know what? I think, and I thank you for acknowledging that I really seek to not come from a place of judgment. I got that from my dad. Because, my father, you can talk to him about anything in the world,
Anything.
anything in the
Yeah.
world, anything. I mean, there's a reason I was talking with Ray Lewis Thornton. I said, there's a reason that you went to daddy first to tell him that you had AIDS before you told
Yeah.
anybody. You went to him. I said, it's because he doesn't come from a place of judgment. And she looked at me, she said, absolutely. I
Yep.
knew with him I would only find love. And he wouldn't even let her finish saying what she had. He said, whatever it is, I loved you then and I love you now. And he just
Hmm.
hugged her. And
Yeah.
sometimes, we all want acceptance, Pastor.
That's it. It's a
Okay.
basic human need. We want validation, affirmation, and acceptance.
Okay. And thank you for
Yeah.
that. Thank you for that. I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am.
and it is an elephant. There are elephants in the room. There are elephants. And guess what? Just deal with it and get your help. Because look, I have so many self-help books, honey, I can have a library. Yes. Well, because I'm like, and then you go on YouTube and you find, oh wow, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
Killing Me Softly
Yes.
with his song. Oh my gosh. I felt all flushed with fever. Wait a minute, you singing about me. Yeah. And it's okay. Everybody's been through something, everybody. Nobody, as
That's right.
John Lennon said, gets out of this alive.
That's
Everybody's
right.
dealing with something. And if you all are waiting for Dr. Shanita Knight, and she'll be back next week, Dr. Reverend Thurston, she is teaching in Saudi Arabia this week.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
that's right. All over the world, people want her. And guess what? We get her every day here on the Santita Jackson Show. Can you believe it?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. She's teaching over in Saudi Arabia, infection prevention. It is now the new wave in healthcare. People want to know how to prevent infection. And like I said, it was very interesting what's happening in Gaza because these people are not allowed to bathe because there's no fuel, there's no electricity, they've been completely cut off. They're developing skin diseases and things like that. So as they're releasing the hostages, the Israeli hostages who've been kept in Gaza, they're saying, "Oh my God, they were kept in such awful conditions." I said, "No, no, no, they're living like Gazans." Okay.
Yeah.
So they can't bathe.
Yep.
Their food, they can only have bread. Their meals are being rationed to them because that's how Gazans are treated every day. It's got to stop. So when you think about that, because you got Palestinian prisoners and Israeli hostages, they're all prisoners and they're all hostages, depending upon how you look at it. Most of the Palestinians who've been released were never even charged. They've just been held in jail. Does that sound familiar?
That's right.
Okay. So it just stopped. I'm not taking sides, everybody. I call balls and strikes. I want justice. And when you have justice, you don't have war. When you have justice, you have love. You have peace, not just quiet. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Anita, what's on your mind, sweetie? I got 2 minutes before we go to this break. Love you, sweetie. What's your question or comment?
Well, I appreciate that elephant in the room sermon, and we have lots of elephants right now. Nothing is being solved. I guess we've got all teenagers as adults now. But what I want to say is the Palestinians that was either injured in Vermont. I would not want to continue to see this happening here because then that war is now coming to our country. And I'm wondering, I think more people need to be encouraged to come out and ask for the ceasefire because, like they said, this is genocide and it should not be coming to this country like that. And I'm very concerned about that because that happened where Bernie Sanders was. So,
well, he was the mayor.
If it happened there, yeah, that's not good.
Well,
That's
you're making a great
thing.
point, but Congressman Jackson, your favorite, Jonathan Jackson, said, the war already hit here, Anita and Pastor Thurston, because guess what? You had the 6-year-old boy who was stabbed 26 times, and his mother was stabbed multiple times. It's here. It's here.
Right. This is,
and it needs to stop.
Gut and butter.
And
gut is not a thing.
That's right. And push for the ceasefire, everybody. Push for it. You want it, but lobbying money is keeping our congresspersons from voting on it. And you need to take all this money out of our politics because we can't even talk to the things that really impact Americans, like poverty, like all these homeless people in Chicago, migrants and citizens who are sitting up here in the cold. I want to have that discussion. If you want to live in a neighborhood, you don't get along with anybody, and you just want to continue to war with everybody, well, that's your business. I don't have time for that in the United States. Yeah, I said it. Mic drop on that. Stay right there, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. And look, I'm tired of this because Anita, I don't know if Pastor Thurston is still there. We can't even get to putting money into the issues that face Americans, that bedevil Americans every day. This is ridiculous. Anita, you there? Well,
no, she dropped.
Okay, but that's how I feel about it, y'all. So I want you to call me and let me know what you think. Because I think this is ridiculous. And then you say y'all gonna fight some more war with whose money? Mine? I'm not feeling that. You're gonna hit Hamas with full force. Who are they? You're not even negotiating with Hamas. You're negotiating with Qatar. I mean, what is this? Who are Hamas? How were they able to commit these atrocities? What's the deal? I feel like I'm punching a ghost. It's too much. So call me at 763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And let's talk about this. Is Israel to hit Hamas with full force after the truce ends? Really? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. As if they haven't, goodness gracious. So there's that. Okay, who do I have on? Well, maybe no one yet. Okay.
I'm here.
Hey,
Santita,
Jonah?
how you doing? This is Jonah.
I know your voice, Jonah. How are you, hon?
Doing good.
You hearing me
Thanks
in my
for having me again.
Oh, honey, of course. I told you you all have a home here. You hearing me in my
No.
rant. I'm so tired of war. And I was riding down the street yesterday and I saw all these homeless people. And I said, wait. This money that they keep printing and throwing out into the wind, we need right here. You got 16 million vacant units of housing in the United States, and y'all can't figure out how to keep these people out from underneath the viaducts. You can't figure out, as cold as it is. I mean, my heart just, oh my gosh. My brother, Jonathan, the congressman, couldn't sleep one night. And he said, I figured God got me up, so let me just get on up. And he drove not too far from his house. And he said, seeing these migrants just broke my heart. Seeing them outside. And, oh my gosh. He said, and then I just started thinking about what they're now being pulled into. Many of the women are now being pulled into prostitution because they're just trying to make it, right? All this money that they're getting. No, they're not getting all that, everybody. Jeff Bezos is getting your money with government contracts.
Yep.
I'm just tired of it, Jonah. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of, now Israel comes in beating their chest. Oh, we're going to resume. Well, we're gonna pound Hamas like never before. And now you're shooting
all
at
your guests are on.
The Palestinians who want to go home to northern Gaza. They killed at least 2 of them. I mean, what is that? You're killing people on the West Bank. What are you trying to do?
30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't really understand why there's always more money for war, but not for actually helping people and solving the problems that we have.
That's your generation's fight. You all can turn this around, and I know that you will. So stand by.
We're working.
Oh, I know. That's why you're here, Jonah and Dwight.
10 seconds.
Hello. Okay, David Gibbs.
Stand by.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Bryce Green.
Good morning. I'm here too.
Oh, stand by.
Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. You want to stay right here because we're going to give you the best reporting from the Democratic National Convention come next summer. It's going to be fantastic, everybody. But right now, let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East. Where else? What else? That is what everyone is talking about. Why? Because this local conflict has become a regional conflict, and many people saying that it will be a world conflict. And it certainly is. Would not be a conflict if America's dollars were not all up in it. Now, Netanyahu's chilling warning, as one of the newspaper headlines is, that as Hamas seeks a truce extension, Israel is going to hit Gaza with full force once this truce is over. So they're planning to use more force and fight across all of Gaza following this truce. What do you think about that? Their defense minister, Yoav Gallant, said the same thing. He said, "You now have a few days. We will return to fighting. We will use the same amount of power and more. We will fight in the entire Gaza Strip." Wow. What does that mean? You will meet something that is a little more ready. Therefore, Hamas will meet first, the bombs of the Air Force, and after that, the shells of the tanks and the artillery, and the scoops of the D9 bulldozers, and finally, also gunfire of the infantry troops, as we're watching more and more hostages released and Palestinian prisoners. They're both hostages and they're both prisoners, if you ask me. And when you're talking about the condition of the hostages held in Gaza, many people are now remarking on their poor condition, that they were not able to bathe for 7 weeks, that they have had very little food. Well, now they're living like Gazans live. Gazans have had a certain amount of calories apportioned to them by the Israeli government for years prior to October 7th. And with their infrastructure having been shut down, they're not able to bathe. And so now they have skin diseases. They are very sick now. And you have babies who are dying in the hospitals that are left, and they're dying for no reason at all. Women are having babies on the floor, C-sections, that they're being literally cut open without any anesthesia, without any painkillers. Oh, y'all, we got to do better than this. And now you're saying, wait a minute, after this truce, where we've seen relative quiet, because the Gazans who've been going back to northern Gaza, at least a couple of them have been killed. They've been shot at by the IDF. They have not been allowed to go home. And that was their fear. That's why they didn't leave. They said, if I leave, you're not going to let me go back home. Well, they're not being allowed to go back home. It is really, really, really something awful. So we have got this tremendous panel. Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona. Of course, Bryce Green from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, and the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project here in Chicago. And Jonah Karsh, IDF, but he's also a great pianist, and I cannot wait to work with him because that's what we need to do. Jonah, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, when you hear Israel say, look, we're going to hit Gaza with full force, and their defense minister said it's going to be even more forceful, more violent, if you will, than before. I mean, I think we've all been heartened by this truth. Like maybe this will lead to something. What happened?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on, Santita. And I would say that the movement I'm a part of, if not now, of young American Jews who stand against Israel's apartheid system and are looking for a future of justice and equality for all Israelis and Palestinians, we're taking the position that that the pause that we're seeing is good, and that what we need is an end to the war to allow what we're seeing happening in the pause to continue. I think there's just been a failure, a complete misanalysis of what got us to this point. We're hearing from some members of Congress that because Israel has pummeled Gaza, that somehow that led Hamas to be willing to negotiate and gave the leverage necessary for the release of all of the hostages that we've seen, when we have reporting that indicates that Prime Minister Netanyahu weeks ago, before thousands and thousands of more innocent Palestinians died, had rejected a similar deal from Hamas to release hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. So we believe that what got us here was diplomacy, and that what will end this war is diplomacy, and that continuing to collectively punish the people of Gaza, deprive them of food and water, continuing what one of a UN official called the worst humanitarian crisis he's ever seen, is not going to give Israel what it wants, but it's also just completely unconscionable and inhumane. And that both in order to bring the hostages home and to rebuild Gaza and move towards a future where Palestinians enjoy the same rights as everyone else, we need to end the war.
Well, and all wars end with a political resolution, right? I mean, you don't shoot your way out of war; you negotiate your way out of it. You declare a ceasefire, and then. So I don't understand what this collective punishment, and more countries around the world, Jonah, are pointing at as Israel as war criminals. I mean, they're going to come out of this with a severely damaged reputation, as will the United States, Jonah. At least that's my estimation.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We're hearing that State Department officials have been warning of exactly this, but I think at the top of the administration, there's an attitude based maybe on President Biden's personal history with Israel, which, look, people in the Jewish community, people in If Not Now, myself included, have personal history with the people of Israel too, and we care a lot about their safety. But the conclusion that they seem to have drawn is that we need to publicly support Israel as much as possible and maybe make some objections clear on the margins privately. That strategy so far has yielded 15,000 dead Palestinians, more children killed than in the whole Ukraine war so far, than in all the annual average of global conflicts around the world of children killed. It's a complete humanitarian crisis. And of course, the world is going to say that this is not what we're talking about when we say Israel has a right to defend itself. This is not what we're talking about when we say that we don't want Hamas in power. We can't pit Israeli and Palestinian safety against each other.
Call us at 773-763-9278 before I go to the rest of the panel. I've got Reno calling. Reno, where are you calling from? Nevada? Just kidding. How you doing, Reno?
Did you call for Lee?
Yes, Reno. How are
Hello.
you?
Oh, good. You might remember me. I was standing on the stage after the town hall trying to talk to you.
Oh.
And I guess you were just too tired. But I just have to say, if we had your voice and the voices of your guests across the nation, we wouldn't have any problems anymore, because you'd address everything with truth, with justice, with something that will make all of the disagreements understood and go away. There would be no fascism, no Trump, no imperialism. I'm serious. I'm not joking. We have no liberal media in this country. We're basically covered with right-wing coverage. They have the book What Liberal Media tells you we're not even a voice anymore. The thing we have to do is get your voice across the country, because just like you say, knowledge is power, and knowledge brings justice. It doesn't bring war. Your song "Change the World" is so on target. That's what you're trying to do, and you would do it if you were out there.
Well, no,
Tom Hartman has something.
We're out there. You know what? We're out there. Just go on and continue to spread the show, because we're right where God needs us to be. And we'll just
we
continue
really got to
to
get you, get Congress to put you on the air. Seriously. I'm sorry. I've got much more to say, but I know you're busy going on. Thank you for taking my call.
No, you're so sweet, Reno. Reno, just like and share the show. And I love you, Reno. This is so sweet. And everybody just continue to like and share the show. That is what we will do. It's very interesting. My algorithms have gotten messed up, particularly Bryce Green, since I've been taking these positions. Now Facebook says that my show is going to be on 1 hour or 2 hours later than it actually is. I mean, just all these crazy things are happening. Everybody like and share the show and just continue. Let's continue to move forward. Bryce Green, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, it's like you say, the Israeli military establishment is pretty much promising that no matter what happens with the ceasefire, which we do hope will continue, but they're saying no matter what happens, they're planning continuing their military campaign of wiping out Gaza. And we know what their plans are, and we've really known for decades and decades what their plans are. They say it, and they talk openly about how they wish Gaza would sink into the sea. They talk openly about how they despise the Palestinians, how they want Gaza to go away. And this war has really been a pretext to carry out some of these longstanding ethnic cleansing plans. I'm sure your listeners might recall the leaked document from the Israeli Ministry of Intelligence that offered as a suggestion that the Palestinians, instead of staying in Gaza, they leave, quote unquote, voluntarily into the Sinai Desert, in Egypt. And this plan said that this was preferable to other options for dealing with the situation in Gaza, the solution in Gaza, because it would result in the fewest civilian casualties. Now, listen closely to what that means. It basically means that they want the Palestinians to leave, and if they don't leave, they're going to kill them. That's barbaric, honestly. And we're seeing that barbarity in action. Joe Biden was worried that a ceasefire would allow journalists to go into the Gaza Strip and document some of the destruction. This was reported in Politico, this worry was. But that's a correct worry, because now we're seeing some horrifying images of the destruction of northern Gaza and even southern Gaza, the so-called safe zone. There's really nothing left of northern Gaza. Well over 60% of the buildings have been destroyed or damaged. The medical facilities have been stormed and occupied by Israeli occupation forces. There's really no words to describe it. And like your last guest said,
you have a caller.
Now, the UN is saying that this is a, quote, graveyard for children. And if you look at the numbers, it's just astounding. They're killing children at a faster rate than any conflict in modern history. There's on average 130 children dying a day as a result of Israel's bombardment campaign. And even during the ceasefire, the carnage still continues. As many human rights organizations have reported, the advent of disease is extremely prevalent in the Strip, where they've bombed the sewage treatment plants. There is no clean water, and of course, those conditions will foster really epidemic conditions. And what's even more barbaric is that some Israeli officials have said that this actually benefits what Israel wants to do in Gaza. The fact that there is, disease and death, that helps Israel. And so again, we know what Israel's plans are. We know what they want to do. All that remains is for the U.S. to decide how it's going to respond. And now this ceasefire has caused a narrative of Biden sort of being a peacemaker. People are saying, like, why are you criticizing Biden in public? Behind the scenes, he's helping to broker the ceasefire. Of course, this is nonsense. Everyone with a brain understands that Biden has tremendous leverage over what Israel does by virtue of being the country that pays the bills. A sizable chunk of Israel's military budget is provided by the United States. We just, our reaction to Israelis' murder of children by the thousand, destruction of an entire civilian population, and the displacement of 1.7 million people, Biden's reaction hasn't been to chastise Israel. It hasn't been to try to moderate their behavior. Instead, it's been to completely support it. They've removed restrictions on stockpile transfers from American military to Israel. They've proposed billions and billions more in military aid that would go toward. We know exactly where that money's going. It's going towards dropping more bombs. It's going towards killing more children, storming more hospitals, creating a crisis situation, and eventually ethnic cleansing. Biden's response to this crisis has been to increase support and refuse to criticize. And therefore, he is complicit and, in fact, an active participant in everything that's going on there. And so this narrative of him as a peacemaker is completely false. He's enabling Israel's campaign of ethnic cleansing, and until there's a shift in American policy, Israel's campaign can continue.
Dr. Gibbs, your thoughts? What is this? I mean, we see the IDF are shooting at the feet of the people who are trying to leave northern Gaza. The people who are trying to return home to northern Gaza. They're being shot, and some of them have been killed. And now, with this truth that people said, well, maybe there will be some movement. Israel has said no. We're going to now. Once this is over, we're going to pound Gaza like never before. I mean, we're not even speaking of what's happening to the Palestinians on the West Bank. The settlers have declared open season on them. What is going on?
Well, there's always been a faction in the Israeli establishment that has grown more powerful that has basically wanted to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians from Gaza and sort of incorporate that into greater Israel. The West Bank as well is seen in that light. And the current government we have under Netanyahu is the most extreme nationalist government Israel has ever had. Led by people who are, some people are openly very public anti-Arab racists and say so very proudly. I think in particular Itamar Ben-Gvir, who for a long time idolized a man who went in and massacred 29 Palestinians in the West Bank. These are the people making policy to some extent. They're often very sort of religious fanatics. Netanyahu himself is not religious, but certainly his government is religious in the worst way, I would say. It really has to be said in the worst way. These are sort of anti-Arab racists, a lot of them, as I said. And so I think they view what happened on October 7th both as obviously a terrible thing, which of course it was, to be avenged. But more than vengeance, I think they saw it as an opportunity to implement, with quote-unquote justification, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinian territories, beginning with Gaza, possibly even extending also to the West Bank. There's definitely some element of this in what Israel is doing, or at least trying to do. And I'm sure the Israeli government is debating right now, the Israeli military is debating right now, how far do they want to go in this? How far do they want to go in trying to push the Palestinians out of the West Bank? And how far is the United States willing to go in allowing this to happen, or even abetting it? That's the key question. I think from the American standpoint, they've always regarded Israel as America's unsinkable aircraft carrier, an extension of American power in the Middle East, an outpost for the U.S. Overseas presence. And so I think that that's a big motive here, is preserving that unsinkable aircraft carrier and encouraging it. Of course, there's the Israel lobby, both in terms of its Jewish and evangelical components. But I think an even bigger factor is just the sense that the United States wants to preserve itself as the sort of massive globally dominant power, and Israel is seen as an important component in that. Hence the extraordinary degree of U.S. support for Israel, including, as has been noted, some really quite horrific military undertakings with devastating consequences for innocent people, including including children.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, this is what we've always said it was from day one, was a pretext for genocide. And if this was Germany or Iran or Iraq doing this, we would call this what it is. It's a terrorist state whose single goal it is to eradicate the existing population so it itself can take over the whole land. And it does not matter how many children they kill. It does not matter what the terms of peace can be laid out. The goal is not peace. The goal is not equity. The goal is total domination. It is the total eradication of people there.
You have a second caller.
And turn it into a Jewish state. This is not just politics. This is not just militarism. This is also religion. The Zionists want their own state with nobody but Zionists living there. And because they feel like God has promised them this, that the people that are living there, the Palestinians, are in the way of God's plan. And they have a mandate from God to eradicate them, to kill them, to drive them out by any means necessary. And the tragedy of America is that we are the tools by which this is happening. Biden is a war criminal at the same level as any other war criminal that we've looked at historically. He is co-signing genocide. You can call it what you want to call it, but this guy is doing the same thing that Nazi Germany did, that Iran did to some of their people, that Pol Pot did. He's at that level of co-signing the killing of innocents for political reasons. And so if people of goodwill don't stand up and tell the truth and fight, that what we'll see is an extension of the same mentality that happened in World War One and World War II, where if you hadn't put a check and balance on Hitler, he would have dominated the world if he could. And because the morality was not in-house. There's no morality. There's no humanity in these people. The only check and balance on them is going to be us.
Dr. David, before you have to go and deal with your academic work, I mean, I've got a couple of minutes before we go. I mean, what is going on here? What is this? I mean, because, you're only going to have a political solution to end a war. You don't shoot your way out of a war. You negotiate your way out of one. And for them to come off of this truce and say, okay, gotcha, this will be great, but what we're going to do is we're going to give a show of force like never before. What are they thinking? I mean, because I'm also looking at how they're being condemned by countries all over the world. Dr. Gibbs, 2 minutes for you.
Well, I think that the point I want to come back to again is the role of the United States. Now, we've had much discussion here of what the political solution should be. I myself still favor the idea of a two-state solution, although people have credibly come up with the idea of a one-state solution, sort of just a democratic, non-ethnic, non-religious Israel-Palestine for both Israel, Jews and Arabs to exist. Either way, whatever is done in terms of the local situation, the key point for us as American citizens is what should our country's policy be. And we are playing a decisive role, as has been noted by multiple people here, enabling this by our subsidizing over a period of many decades of the Israeli military. If we're not for American subsidies, American political backing, the sending of aircraft carrier task forces to the Eastern Mediterranean, all of these things, Israel would not be able to be engaging in these kinds of highly aggressive activities. Israel would be forced to seek some kind of political settlement. And it's only the United States that enables this kind of brutality, this kind of aggression. And so I think that before we start discussing even what Israel and the Palestinians should do, I think we as Americans should discuss what our country is doing and should be doing, and what our role is in the horrific situation going on in Gaza.
In about 30 seconds, what do you think it ought to be?
Personally, I think cutting off Israeli subsidies and declaring that the United States favors political settlement here. And however a political settlement is achieved, it will be achieved without American subsidies for Israel and without continuing American political support for Israeli war-making activities. Without, the United States is going to treat Israel like another country, and to stop enabling Israel to engaging in these kinds of militaristic activities. That's okay. If somebody wants my opinion as to what American foreign policy should be, that's what American foreign policy should be.
What do you think? Call us at 773-763-9278. Dynamo Dave and David from San Francisco have called in with their ideas. What are yours? Do we need more war or do we need peace? Jonah Karsh. Dr. David Gibbs is going to go on and grade some papers, make some people very happy and make some other people miserable. Go on, Dr. David Gibbs and Dwight McKee. And, of course, Bryce Green. Stay right here with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. You all keep talking. I mean, Dwight, I know you said that this has been the goal. I mean, and I hear you. You're right. But I guess when you hear them say the quiet part out loud, it's a lot to hear.
They don't want a political solution. Israel, the Zionists, Netanyahu in that crowd, they're not interested in a political solution. All it is a pretext. What they want is complete annihilation of the Palestinians, they're looking not for a political solution, and like Hitler, they're looking for a final solution. They want them out of the country. Now they don't feel like they need to kill them all to get them out of the country. They
Attorney Fancher's on.
out of the country, but they're willing to kill them to drive them out of the country because they want one state which is dominated by Zionists, which is a state that they're trying to get ready for the coming back of the Messiah. This is a mentality that goes back almost 2,000 years. And they define themselves as a chosen people that represents God's kingdom on earth. And they're trying to get Israel ready for the return of the Messiah. And so there's really almost nothing you can say to them for them to be willing to integrate the Palestinians into their society, because they see them as heretics, and they see them as inhuman, and they see them as adversaries. They don't have no sense of them as brothers or equals, or it's the same mentality that the Germans looked at when they looked at, Jewish people and black people and homosexuality, and because they had the same mentality, they saw themselves as a chosen people. And there's nothing more dangerous than the mentality of you are chosen and everybody else is mediocre in your way.
Jonah, what is your sense of things? I mean, because this clearly is not your thinking. And Mark Fancher, how you doing, Mark?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning.
I mean, what is going? It's the dangerous thing, Jonah, is that what happens to you if it's a painful experience and good experience and experiences that make you feel good. What happens to you will happen in you. You can tell when people have not been well loved because they become hateful. And on and on and on it goes. I mean, what does a Jewish state look like to you, or do you think that that's necessary? I mean, because prior to 1947, you had everybody living in this area, coexisting. What should Israel look like to you? I mean, do we need two states? I mean, what do you think?
Me personally, if not now's position is sort of what our criteria is that all Palestinians and Israelis have democracy, have human rights, and that Palestinian refugees are able to return to their homes, and that there's equality under the law for every single person between the river and the sea. So if that takes the form of two states, and that's what the majority of the Israeli and Palestinian people decide they want, I think we would be supportive of it. I guess my point of view is that in a state that by its nature privileges Jews over non-Jews, that requires like demographic Jewish majority, which would prevent things like refugee return for Palestinians, that you're not going to achieve that kind of equality in a state that's just for Jews. And I hear what Mr. McKee's saying. There's a huge swath that's becoming more and more empowered of these religious Zionist settlers who are looking for a greater Israel. But I also believe that there's a big portion of the Israeli people that are not motivated by religion, but have taken on this idea that they can't be safe, that they have to oppress the Palestinian people in order to be safe. And I think without having to appeal to some radical religious thing, which hopefully most people in Israel don't have, that you can change that mindset is our hope. But totally heard. Yeah.
Well, do you see this? Do you believe that Israel's going to become that they're going to become more ferocious in their attacks of the Gazans? Do you think that's what's going to happen? everybody, Jonah. I mean, I kind of take them at their word. That's what's scary.
I think I have to take them seriously until they prove otherwise. I know there. I mean, there's a big protest. It's interesting because in the United States, the movement to bring home the hostages is sort of associated with support for the war. In Israel, the movement to bring home the hostages tends to be more left-wing folks saying, we need to bring home the hostages and stop the war.
1 minute.
Prioritizing killing Palestinians over bringing home our own people. So I think that movement had a lot to do with the pause that we saw. And I know there's pressure, and a lot of Israelis do not like Netanyahu, even if they're firmly Zionist. But I think until they prove otherwise, that's like what we're going to see. And hopefully some of the momentum that we're seeing in the Democratic Party will make it that if what happens is continued carnage, that people speak out more forcefully. But I don't want to have to test that theory.
30 seconds.
That we just end this now.
I'm with you. But it's awful. I mean, and we're seeing the fallout in the United States. That's what Anita was. She was bemoaning that. She said, I don't want us to come here. I'm like, honey, you had a 6-year-old boy who was stabbed 26 times.
10 seconds.
It's here. You know, and now you've got these 3 Palestinians walking down the street. They were shot.
Stand by.
You've got Jewish students, Palestinian students, Muslim students, Jewish students.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. Can you believe it's less than a month before Christmas? Perhaps the spirit of Christmas will settle on the Middle East and we'll have peace. That is certainly something that we're going to pray for, but you're going to have to work for it, everybody. You're going to have to vote about it. You're going to have to march about it and make it happen, because so much of what's happening over there is really is influenced by Americans, because it's our money. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And I am coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Keep it locked right here. If you want the best news coming out of the Democratic National Convention, it's right here. We're going to be all over it come next summer when the Democrats land in Chicago. In fact, they're already here planning for the convention. So good on you, everybody. We're going to have John Nichols at the bottom of the hour talking about the big wins for the UAW, for the union movement. Yeah, but right now we're talking about Israel and Hamas, and Israel saying, well, we're going to use more force and fight across all of Gaza following this truce. After we get some of these hostages back, it is on and cracking. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And you can go to the SantitaJackson.com. That's right. I'm up and working, everybody. Ooh, my website. Let me know what you think. SantitaJackson.com. Let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Israel and Hamas agreed to extend the pause in fighting by 2 days. This pause, which went into effect on Friday, would have expired today without yesterday's agreement, and it could be extended even further. A man pleaded not guilty to shooting students of Palestinian descent in Vermont. Indeed, they're Palestinian Americans, 3 of them, and they are all in intensive care, but they are doing better. But he has been charged with second-degree murder. James Eaton, 48. James Eaton, 48. He's not just a man. He is someone who tried to kill these 3 Palestinian students. James Eaton, 48 years of age. President Biden will attend the tribute service for First Lady Rosalynn Carter, who made her transition just a few days ago. She and President Carter married. My goodness, they're the longest married presidential couple in history. I think it's 79 years, 77 years. God bless them. God bless them. Everybody will be there. All of our living first ladies will be there. President Biden, Vice President Harris, God bless her, and as will President Jimmy Carter. God bless him, everybody. New Zealand is abandoning their plan to ban smoking, and scientists have discovered a new type of stem cell in the spine. In Chicago, well, it's going to be cold today, everybody. I don't know what else to tell you. It is going to have, we're going to have a high of 26 degrees. It'll be sunny. It looks beautiful, but it is freezing. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 32 degrees and cloudy. If you see some homeless people just standing outside who have no place to go, direct them to a fire station, direct them to a library, direct them to a police station. No one should be cold. No one. No one, no one. Please direct them so that they can be inside and get to these warming stations so that they do not freeze to death. In the NFL, the Bears 12, the Vikings 10. Some people called it a dud, but I'll take the win, everybody. In the NBA, the Bulls will be playing Boston, and the Thunder will be playing the Timberwolves, and in the NHL, Chicago and the Wild will be playing tonight. Everybody, if you're looking to purchase a home, the many people are saying, I can't purchase a home. I can't pull together this 20% that I need to put down to just start the process. I don't have good credit. Well, Team Hochberg has an answer for you. Number one, they have a credit card. You load it up and you work with them for a few months and you begin to raise your credit score so that you can be eligible for a loan. But also they have a program that will allow you to put 1% down with no private mortgage insurance, and you can get a home. But you got to call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. It might sound too good to be true. It's not. It's a program. You have to qualify for it, everybody. This is the biggest challenge facing so many people, putting down or pulling together this 20%. With inflation being what it is and food costing what it costs, if you get sick, God help you. Well, guess what? They say, you know what? You need 1%. You need 1%. That's all you need. But you need to qualify for this program. So you need to call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, Team Hochberg. They have this program that's going to help listeners like you who qualify for this program to overcome this challenge of needing 20%. 20%. You only need 1%. That's right. Team Hochberg wants to help you, your family, your friends, your children, everybody you know, everybody who's within the sound of my voice, to get into this program so that you can be a homeowner. But you have to qualify for it. You need to call them and find out. Now you can go to 56david.com, go there, and you can read about it. But call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, and talk to them and let them know, just let them know what's going on with you. After you sit with them, they've heard it all. So don't be embarrassed by anything. You know, this is about taking the shame, the blame out of it so you can go on and get your piece of the American dream, everybody. If you're purchasing a home, do yourself a favor, call Team Hochberg to see if you qualify for this new 1% down payment program with no private mortgage insurance. It is not too good to be true. It is a real legitimate program, and I want you to be a part of it if you can. Call Team Hochberg now at 855-56-DAVID, 855-563-2843, 855-563-2843, or go to 56david.com. I'm really, really keen on that program. Everybody, what about this truce? Well, we've been looking at it. It's been working for the most part. I mean, although the IDF have been shooting at the feet of Palestinians who've been trying to leave the north, and they have killed at least 2 Palestinians who've returned to the north because they wanted to see their homes. The reason they didn't leave was because they thought they would be displaced. Excuse me. So it turns out their greatest fears are upon them, as they say in the Bible. And so we have got Dwight McKee, Dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, brilliant social scientist. We've got Jonah Karsh from If Not Now, their political lead. And we've got Attorney Mark Fancher. Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian, author, opiner. He writes some brilliant political analyses. Everybody can read him in Black Commentator Report and so many other outlets. Let me start with you, Mark Fancher. What do you make of the Israelis, Netanyahu, as well as their defense minister, who said, their defense minister, Yoav Gallant, said, you now have a few days. We will return to fighting. We will use the same amount of power and more. We will fight in the entire strip, you will meet something that is more ready. Therefore, Hamas will meet the first bombs of the Air Force, and after that, the shells of the tanks and the artillery and the scoops of the D9 bulldozers. That's how they killed Rachel Corrie. And finally, also gunfire in the infantry troops. Wow. What do you make of that?
Well, it certainly, in one sense, is absolutely criminal. What they have done and what they propose to do will be war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide, and certainly, by most standards, not including theirs, it's immoral. But if we put those things aside, what they're proposing to do is impractical, even from their point of view, even when you start considering what their interests are. Because what they're doing is they have set out to, in their words, eliminate Hamas. But the more that they engage in this type of violence, the more that it hits and strikes civilians and people who are non-combatants, the more that it targets non-military targets, especially things like hospitals, educational institutions, places of worship, and things like that. The more that it does that, then it is not eliminating Hamas, it's making Hamas grow. Because what you do is you have people to see the ferocity. They begin to see the immorality and the amorality of the Israeli approach. And if they were not supporters of Hamas before, they will be now, because the resistance is only natural. It's to be expected. And so in the end, if Israel is truly committed to eliminating Hamas, to use their words, then what they will have to do is to eliminate the Palestinian population, which is something that they're already doing, which is genocide, but now it becomes the official policy. And, how anyone can begin to accept that or understand it is something that is mystifying. And there is a spillover effect. This is not just something that the state of Israel, the Israeli government, is going to be tagged with. There are reports now that throughout the Arab world in particular, the face of this war is not necessarily the Israeli government or the Israeli Defense Forces, but it's Joe Biden. And he has been branded as the one who is ultimately responsible for all of the carnage and the violence. Because the thinking is that they would not be able to do all of this if the U.S. did not supply them with the heavy military weaponry that they provided them with, and the artillery and the bombs and everything else. And so there has been, and there continues to be, a boycott against U.S. multinational corporations, which, from a political perspective, is a wonderful thing. But I think that the U.S., those of us in the U.S., have to be mindful of the fact that this is not a contained conflict. This is not something that's limited to the Palestinian region or to Gaza. This is something that's global in its implications.
And it will impact us wherever we go. We, of course, pray for Dr. Shanina Knight and her husband, who are over in Saudi Arabia. Travel. Americans have been warned about traveling, Jonah Karsh. I mean, as I go to you and Dwight and the callers. I mean, we're not unaffected by this, Jonah. And I'm wondering about this internal dialogue that you're having, because you were saying that If Not Now is a Jewish organization, and certainly in the civil rights movement, we understand that because we've had Black organizations, because there's some internal dialogues that you need to have with families, so you can work a lot of things out, because we all are products of our culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are some of the internal dialogues that are occurring within the Jewish community, particularly within the Jewish American community, or can you limit it to that?
I think
you have a third caller.
That Jewish Americans talk about Israel is certainly a really good place to start in thinking about this. I think what you hear from when you talk to the American Jewish community is that the overwhelming majority of American Jews vote for Democrats, are relatively liberal on most social issues, and that many of them are not fans of Benjamin Netanyahu and view him as bad for Israel. But fundamentally, what we're trying to help more and more American Jews understand, and we know that there's a strong contingent that already feel this way, but we want to continue this, is that the history of Jewish trauma does not justify imposing that same sort of trauma and harm, even if it's not equivalent in scope, is not okay to be imposed on another people as a means to keep us safe. That Jews and Palestinians need to create a shared future of democracy and human rights, and that when you keep a people under your thumb, deprive them of basic human rights, and oppress them, maybe you can live in a glass house for a little bit, but October 7th showed us that method does not keep Jews safe in the long run. So what we're trying to help more American Jews realize is that we know there's so much fear in our community. We know that that's informed by intergenerational trauma and the history of our people, but we also know that the answer to that cannot be the oppression of the Palestinian people, both because it's completely immoral, because it goes against the Jewish values that I think I was raised with, that I think I was taught by some of the very same people who are now turning around and supporting this war, but also because in the long run, it's not good for us. It doesn't keep us safe.
Well, I'm not making excuses for people, but you do understand the impact of trauma, right? It's just very human. It's very human for us to not want justice. We want revenge. If someone's done something to me, I want to do it back to you, blah, blah, blah. How do we get out of that? I mean, how do you talk people out of that, Jonah?
What If Not Now talks about when we talk about the future that we want to see is a shared society where we understand that as long as Israelis and Palestinians and Jews and Palestinians are in that land together, that they need to create a future together, and that the only path forward to that is to end a system that systematically privileges Israeli Jews and is over everybody else, a system that Amnesty International and human rights have called apartheid. And the only way to break the cycles of trauma is to understand our future as intertwined with others, to create a scenario in which we have a politics of solidarity instead of insularity. And we think that's what we need in the long run.
Dwight McKee, let me bring on a couple of these callers. Deborah, you said you have a book for me to read?
Yes, I do. Shirley Chisholm, The Good Fight. This is about her bringing up this issue a long time ago, and it's been, and The Good Fight by Shirley Chisholm. Everybody should read it. It was republished last year, so people go out and buy it and read it, please. Thank you.
You know what? Did you know I found an autographed copy of that in one of these old bookstores? And that's like one of my favorites. Oh my gosh, Miss
reread
Deborah.
It.
I'm going to reread it.
Starting on page 71.
Are you okay?
Yes.
What's going on with you?
Oh no, I don't think the whole world is okay. But yeah, please reread it.
Well, no,
everybody.
No. I don't want you to go yet. What's going on, Deborah? Miss Deborah, what's going on?
No, people need to know how to play in the sandbox together. Mm-hmm. This is crazy. This is awful. Yeah, I'm okay. I
want you to be okay because you know this is the human dilemma, right? This is what human beings do. And I think that if we can resolve this issue, then we can resolve all others, because part of I think our religious training, if that is your inclination, is to help us to get away from vengeance, because that's such a human, desire. It's to move toward being compassionate and being redemptive. And most of us don't get it, right? I'm not making excuses for anyone, but
Right.
I don't want you to be, you know what? My parents say that
No.
tears, the tears and sweat are made of the same substance. So what you need to do is get some people registered to vote, make some phone calls, march if you need
Yeah.
to, if you can, and you do it that way. Because
Yeah.
I don't want you to walk away from this broadcast feeling. I don't want you to feel despairing at all. I want you to feel very hopeful. Okay.
Well, definitely, I'm very hopeful. I just think Mother Earth is going to kick us humans off this Earth. But other than that, I'm okay. I'm okay, and I'm so glad for your program on the radio. Just like that fellow said earlier, yeah, you keep it up, and I'm going to let you go because I want to listen to what the others say. Thank you.
We love you, Miss Deborah.
Well, I love you too.
All right, sweetie. Okay, God bless you. David from San Francisco. How you doing, David?
Oh, good, Santita. Yeah, sweet show. Your guests are still on?
Oh, yeah. I've got 2 minutes, though, before we go.
Yeah, good. Well, when your dad ran for president in '88, he used a phrase that really worked well out in the cowboy country, and that was economic violence. Now, they've discovered oil underneath Gaza, USGS, the Geological Survey,
half a trillion dollars of the gas and all of that. You're right.
Right. So in cowboy days, they used to drive people off the land if they discovered mineral rights underneath it. It was famous. So this is not unlike people in Gaza are on a reservation, same as out here in the West. They slam all the Indians into a reservation. Oops, they discover oil, right? So it's nothing other than that. It's merchants in the temple, let's say, in Israel, who are pretending that their religion gives them the right to grab that oil. And it's, merchants in the temple, and they're controlling, the diplomacy of the day. And the arms sales have got to stop. These guys are lying phonies. Let's see, there was something I wrote down. Oh, it's taxation without representation. These guys, the guys that are slammed into a walled city. They're not given equal protection. They're not given equal justice. It's not a democracy in Israel. And Israel, by slamming them into a walled city that they can control their food supply, I mean, that's so crazy. And the United Nations gave authorization for Israel to even exist. And one of the ugly truths that they never resolved is that Jerusalem was supposed to be an international city. It was not supposed to be part of Israel. It was supposed to be an international city because it was so important to all of the religions.
It still is.
But it's not for a real estate guy like Donald Trump and Jared Kushner to give Jerusalem over to the merchants in the temple. They've basically created international religious war because they turned that city not into an international city. And so, you got the merchants in the temple that have been used corporate desires to get tax dollars spent on their personal gain. And, they have a war for personal gain, the oil, the mineral rights. So, again, these guys they're just abusing. They're saying it's a political issue. They're saying it's a religious issue when it's nothing more than a corporate, backstabbing corporate takeover. Yeah.
Before we get to John Nichols on the other side, I want everyone on the panel to respond to this. And stay right here. More of the Santita Jackson Show, and SantitaJackson.com is up. So go on over there. Let me know what you think. Sending you so much love. Stay right here. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Wow. Robert Williams said, boom, David. Well, Mark, what do you think of that? Jonah? Because it is a resource rich area. I've always said that, while there's a religious component to this, there is a business component, because guess what? They are still trading the gas right now, even while they're at war. That has not stopped. Chevron didn't move off the coast of Gaza. They're still there, pulling up that gas every day. Mark, Jonah, Dwight, somebody help me. Help.
Never been about religion. It has always, Zionism has never been about religion.
Mm-hmm.
It has always been a tool or a weapon that has been used by imperialism, and it for some cynical people who
Mr. Nichols is on.
Jewish community, but not necessarily of the Jewish faith. It has been their method of, in some way, ensuring what they perceive to be their need for security. But yes, to the extent that this furthers the interest of big oil and others who have their eyes set on controlling resources, then yes, this whole conflict is one that is being strategically used in order to further the interests of imperial power.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. How you doing, John? John? We'll get him. John Nichols.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, no worries. Hey, John. No. Look, I want everyone to give Alex a whole lot of love. He's in between several studios and my show. He's doing a whole lot at one time. I don't know how he does it, but I love him to pieces, and it's one of the great joys of my professional life to work with him.
Thank you, Miss Jackson. That's very kind of you.
You're very welcome, young man. I think that you are just a wonderful, wonderful young man, and he is there real early in the morning, making sure that everything is right, and he gets things right. And when things go wrong, he works until they're right. And I love that. Don't you learn a whole lot when things go crazy? And things do go crazy, do they not, Alex?
Yes, they do, and I have.
But Alex, didn't I tell you that's how you learn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, have those not been your great learning experiences?
Yes, I've learned a great deal.
Okay. Well, I mean, because he's like, Miss Jackson. I'm like, honey, this is the way you learn. When everything goes kerblooey, boom. But before we get to you, John, what I want to do is I want to give Jonah Karsh. I don't know if do you know anyone from, I met, if not now, this group of young Jewish activists. I met them through Jeff Cohen, who I had a wonderful conversation with last night. I love Jeff Cohen. I love it. And so we have Jonah Karsh, who's a jazz pianist, but he's their political lead as well. So he's someone you should know. And of course, Dwight McKee, your dear friend, and attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian out of Michigan. And we have yet another caller. Oh, okay. All right. We're going to make that, but I want them to wrap up their comments. Thank you, Alex. And then we're going to pivot into workers' rights, because that too is we got to work. Hold on. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. I'm going to go to Dan, if you don't mind. Hold on one second. All right. Okay. Stand by. How much time do we have, Alex?
About 10 seconds.
Oh, oops. Okay. Stay right there, you guys. And thank you, Robert. This is a warm sweater. I feel very, very happy to be in this huge turtleneck this morning.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am crazy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And, of course, John Nichols is going to be talking with us about the UAW. And this is a huge win for the union movement, but it's a huge win for all American workers, whether you're in a union or not, but you need to get unionized, everybody. Strength in numbers, collective bargaining really does work. We're talking with Jonah Karsh of It If Not Now. He's their political lead. Dwight McKee, social scientist, Dr. D, affectionately known to us as that person. And of course, attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian and lawyer from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Let me get Dan. Dan is a new caller who says that he has a different perspective on this Israel-Hamas conflict. And we welcome you to the show and welcome your perspective. What's on your mind, Dan?
Thank you, Santita. Well, listen, I'm a progressive, and I've been to Israel a couple times. And the only thing about this whole conflict, I feel that particularly the Arabs and the Palestinians, they misrepresent the history of this thing going all the way back to maybe 1878. But the truth of the matter is, you guys, and I think there should be, don't get me wrong, but there is not now, and there never has been a nation called Palestine. In fact, Israel purchased the land that they purchased that became the state of Israel in 1948. They did not steal it from the Palestinians. Secondly, the vast majority of the people that claim to be Palestinians came to that area after 1948, and many after 1967. Most of them have roots in Syria, Lebanon, and in Jordan. And believe me, I think the situation could be handled much better by Israel and other places. But they did not steal anything from them. They took Jerusalem in 1967 after 6 nations tried to wipe Israel out. But it was taken because they were attacked. Had they never been attacked, they would have never taken Jerusalem.
But you know
But
what,
that's
Dan?
my only point. Thank you, guys.
No, don't leave, because this has been a British colonial project. People have actually already lived there.
Right.
I mean, but Dwight McKee, I know you're itching to get in. Or it's Jonah?
And Marcus,
Well, they wouldn't.
Okay.
They wouldn't have gotten it.
Dwight?
They couldn't have gotten attacked if they weren't there. It's just because you don't name something Palestine does not mean there's not people living there. Just like United States wasn't named the United States, they had indigenous tribes living all over the land, but they didn't have a title for the different lands or geography of different lands. There were just people living there, as people live in different territories. And the Europeans came and wiped them out over time, just took over the land. The same thing happened with the Palestinians. They had been there, many of them, for families for 2,000 years. And when the Zionists came in, they came in buying the land, and it started out that they were 1% of the population, and the people living there was 99%. And over time, they began to take or buy or barter, whatever you want to call it, more and more land. But it was at the behest of the British, who at that point were imperialists, who they took over the land and then decided to divide the land up and give it to the Israelis at the expense of the Palestinians. The war that you're talking about in 1946, 1947, 1948, that was the people around the other communities reacting to this now domination of Europe, the Europeans of the British, and reacting, trying to protect the people, the existing people in the land. And because they lost the war, then became a pretext to say, okay, then now this land belongs to us. And so when you say that the Palestinians never owned the land,
Dan hung up.
lived on the land, they never declared themselves Palestinians. The Romans named them that. But the fact of the matter is they've been living on the land for 2,000 years, as were Christians and some other Jewish people. It was really more of a homogeneous land for those 2,000 years than suddenly the Zionists decide the land is to be theirs and completely theirs, and they begin to run other people off of the land.
Mark, you wanted to weigh in?
Yes, I mean that the whole concept of there not being people there or there not being a nation there is really a function of white supremacy. In early international law, when settler colonialism was in full effect, when so-called explorers were going around the world and claiming lands, they would find lands that were occupied by non-white people, and they would brand them terra nullius, which basically means nobody's land, overlooking the fact that these were lands that were occupied by advanced civilizations, as Dwight explained, especially here in North America, especially in southern and throughout Africa. And in Palestine as well, there were people who were living there, but who did not necessarily have the European concept of land ownership. That was certainly true in North America, where indigenous populations did not have a concept of owning the land. They thought Mother Earth was sacred and could not be owned. And so for anyone to say that because there was no state that was named Palestine betrays a white supremacist perspective that unless you see the world as we see it, then your view is of no consequence, and therefore we can take the land. So I get it. I understand what the Zionist objective is, because in a different way, I share it. The idea is that a people who have been excluded or discriminated against or oppressed will be safe only if they have a land of their own, only if they have a territory of their own. I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I believe that about African people. I believe that until Africa is free, liberated, united, and socialist, and is, in effect, probably the world's premier superpower, that African people globally will not really be protected. But you can't compare that with Zionism. And the reason that you can't is because of one fundamental fact, and that is that whereas there are indigenous populations in the Americas, in Africa, in parts of Europe, and in North America and elsewhere who are fighting to reclaim land that was taken from them, Zionists are people who took land from people who were already there. They're settlers, they're colonizers, and they have no right, morally or otherwise, to go in and to claim that this was land that was unoccupied and that they were justified in quote unquote purchasing it and occupying it. The people who it was taken from by force resist, and they will continue to resist, and the state of Israel will never have peace until there has been justice for the people who are indigenous to that territory.
Jonah, do you have a closing thought? Just a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about all of this. Jonah?
Yeah, what's really hard about talking about this issue is that you have just completely different narratives and sometimes completely different sets of facts that people are understanding to be true. I hear where the caller is coming from, but I think the perspective that he's sharing is maybe not consistent with my understanding of the historical record, which is indeed that in the early days, Zionists bought up land from absentee Palestinian landlords and then kicked Palestinians that were living on it but were not owners of the land off of it. And then in 1948, when the founding of the State of Israel happened, it is true that Arab states rejected the proposed partition plan that the United Nations had put forward. But it's also true that in the Jewish part of the partition, there wasn't a sustainable Jewish majority. And you have documents of the Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, saying, this is not sustainable. We need to get more land than that. And they started to, even before the Declaration of Independence of the state, before Arabs declared war, in the aftermath of that, they started laying out military plans and carrying out forced expulsions of Palestinian villages. And so certainly there are times when Israel has faced attacks from outside forces, but I think the preponderance of the evidence does indicate for sure that there's been a lot of dispossession and displacement and land theft of Palestinians. But in our community, sometimes people are taught a different narrative about it. We have a lot of different narratives that go around, and I just want to urge people to continue to follow the facts. One great documentary for understanding the founding of the State of Israel is called 1948 Creation and Catastrophe, which really does a great job of both balancing the understanding of what Israel meant to the people for whom they achieved some measure of refuge because of it, but also for all the Palestinians who were dispossessed and ethnically cleansed as a result of its creation.
And there you have it, folks. We will continue this discussion another day because I do want to make a pivot to something that's happening domestically and something that will resonate internationally, workers' rights. But you all can stay right here because I would love to get, I'd love for Dwight and Mark, if you have time, and you, Jonah, because I only told Jonah I'd have until 7:30 to comment further. But of course, generously, John Nichols shares his time with us at this time all the time. We were going to talk about Gaza too, but it's like you can't get off that topic. Oh my gosh, John! But we have this huge win by the UAW, and I don't want it to go unnoticed, particularly given. I know, look, having lived through the air traffic controller, the mass firing of the air traffic controllers in 1981, and the massive hit that labor has taken over the past 40, 50 years. This was a huge win.
There's no question it was a huge win. And, I think one of the things that's important in a moment like this is to not imagine that we have to put one story aside, pick another story up, right? They all integrate. The fact of the matter is that we have a world in which there are many liberation struggles, right? And they are, they take many forms. They are part of many conflicts, right? And they can be warped. They can be made into something that people understand as ugly and cruel. They can also be raised up into something that is noble and good. And I only say that up front because as regards the labor movement, right? The labor movement was so down in America, so beaten down in America that just a dozen years ago, Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, literally came in and as his first initiative, took away labor rights, took away the right to collectively bargain effectively for public employees, ultimately did a right-to-work law that undermined the rights of private sector employees, did all these things to knock down labor, and he wasn't alone. It was sweeping across the country. State after state after state was trying to, literally render labor, organized labor, a dysfunctional reality in America. And they were having a lot of success. The level of labor union membership was going down rapidly in the public and in the private sectors. And, there was all these folks, obviously powerful folks, corporate-tied folks who were saying, well, maybe the day of labor is gone. Maybe it was necessary in the 1930s, but it isn't necessary in the 2010s or the 2020s. Well, that was always a lie. That's the kind of lie that they tell, right? They want you to think you don't have this option of coming together collectively to organize, to bargain, to make demands for a fairer workplace, for better pay, just for a say, not just in your workplace, but also in your society. Well, the fact is that labor has come back. It's come back huge. We now have polling data that shows that 2/3 of Americans, 67, 68%, are more favorable toward labor than toward management. We have polling that shows that when labor unions go on strike, 75% or more of Americans support those strikes. I mean, we have become a pro-labor country, and now we're starting to see the results of that. In the last year, we've had the better part of 1 million people, or even the last few months, I should say, the better part of 1 million people come under new contracts that are dramatically better, raised pay, improved benefits, better working conditions, better say in their workplaces and their communities for members of the Teamsters or members of the United Auto Workers who just fought an incredibly bold and brave strike. Took the better part of 2 months, but they won. And it's important to say, they won. They won pay raises that are bigger than what they got in pretty much the last 20 years of contracts for some workers. They also won, a real say in the future of an industry that is rapidly transforming. And we're seeing it in other places too, in SAG and AFTRA, the actors and the writers winning contracts that allow them to take on the biggest technological challenges of our time, AI technology, and making sure that it doesn't exploit them. And just over Thanksgiving, over the last few days, we've seen Starbucks workers out on the street really waging a bold struggle. We're seeing Amazon workers make demands around the world. And I list all this to say that we're in a very exciting time. It's a very frustrating time. There are so many incredibly difficult things that weigh on us. Israel-Palestine at the top of that list, but also, ongoing economic inequality in America, ongoing racial inequality in America. All the challenges that we've had are still there, and then there's the climate crisis. And yet amidst all this, there is a story, an incredible story of people coming together and rising up in labor unions that has the potential to transform, I think, not just the workplace, but frankly, society in some very fundamentally good and better ways.
Well, why do you think that is happening, particularly when we hear and we see a lot of, we certainly see a lot of differences of opinion. I'll put it that way in America. I don't think that they need to be divisions. I think that that's played up. I think that if we spiritually mature, we can say, no, I have a difference of opinion. And if we keep on talking, it might not be that different, or I'll respect your opinion and we can keep it moving. How is it? Because I know people in unions they come from all walks of life and all different experiences.
They sure do.
They have you have some Trumpers in there. You have some Obamaites in there. You have some people, I don't care about any of them in there. You have some of everybody in there, but they're able to come together on their fundamental rights as workers and how they and their right to prosperity. I mean, how has that happened, and particularly now, John?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty easy to explain, and I think you know the answer because you and I have talked about it, and also you're so wise on these things. Look, we've been through some incredibly tough realities of late. There's a longer-term reality that real pay for working-class people has not risen in any substantial way since the 1970s, right? We've, as you adjust for inflation, working-class families have struggled. They've got less and less opportunity, higher costs. It's harder to buy a house, et cetera, et cetera. So people are seeing that this economy isn't working for them. Even when the economy is good, even when we're told, the stock market is up, the economic indicators are good, all the things you hear on television, they look at their own lives and they say, look, I don't have enough to get beyond living paycheck to paycheck, right? And so there's that long-term reality. But then there's what we went through recently with COVID, right? And the COVID moment kind of shook everything up. It did destabilize us. It, in many ways, just as the Great Depression did, or as many other jarring events in American history, you had a period of time, several years, where a tremendous number of Americans were forced into a different circumstance. Some did lose their jobs. Others had to work harder on their jobs. Many millions had to risk their lives to show up for work in not just hospitals and healthcare facilities, but in stores and factories and other places. And many died, right? And I think people saw that they were not necessarily viewed as essential workers. They might have been called that, but at the end of the day, they were viewed as tools, really. They weren't treated well. And I think there was a recognition that coming out of COVID, that people needed to demand more. They needed to demand protection. And that's different from demanding better pay. Protection is just basically the ability to be safe in your workplace. But as they made those demands, and as they recognized their power to make those demands, more and more people realized, hey, we can start to address the fundamental economic injustices of our times by organizing into unions. And where this has been most powerful is among young people. We now have polling that shows something like 88% of younger Americans have a positive view of unions, right? They know that if they're going to have a place in this economy, in this rapidly changing, far more complex economy, if they're going to have a place in it, they can't do it on their own. They're going to have other workers with them.
I mean, what is it? What does a unionless economy, workplace. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, it can be as good or as bad as the boss is, right? If you've got a very benevolent boss, it might be okay, right? And we know those. We've seen those circumstances. They can exist, but there's no guarantee of it. And if you go back to history, right? In history, you see a reference to good King Richard or bad King Richard, right? You know what I mean? Or some kings were good and some were bad. But the problem with that is there's always a king, right? There's always somebody who may turn out to be good, who may turn out to be bad, who has the ability to decide whether your life is good or bad, right? And so the power of a union, the strength of a union, is to say that, if things aren't going well in a workplace, you don't have to beg for better conditions on your own, going to the boss saying, please, I can't afford my mortgage. I can't afford to put my kids through school. And two, the other alternative, leave, right? Try to find work someplace else. If you like your work, if you're good at your work, if you're in a union, you can say, hey, this isn't right. This isn't good. And we can do better. And the interesting thing about it is industries that have unions, that have had unions over the long term, they may grudgingly admit it, but they admit that the union has made their industry more efficient, more stable, stronger in many ways.
How so?
Because workers don't leave, right? They stay, right? And I remember I've covered labor for since the days when I met your dad. I've been a labor writer and done a lot of other political writing as well. But I covered labor for a very, very long time. And I remember once covering a strike in a factory in Toledo, Ohio, and it was bought by a new company that was treating the workers very badly. And I talked to the guy who had used to own it, who everybody said was a good guy, right? And he said, oh, I loved the union. The union was great. And we worked out ways for all the workers to bring in their ideas, to be, more creative, and systems to reward them when they built up the company. I didn't make this company myself. The workers and the union and I made this company. And so in a circumstance like that, you can actually have a very positive relationship. But all of that history was lost, right? It was lost because powerful interests, political interests, wanted to weaken unions so that it wasn't just about the workplace. It was about our politics. They wanted to make sure that unions weren't a part of our politics because unions are a counterbalance to multinational corporations. And that's the critical power that they have. And that power is rising. We should understand we're going to have a lot of fights going forward. This isn't going to be easy, but we're going to finish this year. We're going to look back at one of the greatest years for labor advancement in modern history, maybe even since the 1930s with Franklin Roosevelt. And the key to such a moment is not to celebrate, but to push forward, right? To make sure that next year is an even greater year.
Keep pushing, everybody. Keep pushing, everybody. 1981, maybe that wasn't the end. John, perhaps that was a new beginning, right? 30 seconds.
Can I say, if I can quickly say, 1981, the beating down of labor during the Reagan era gave birth to the Jackson candidacy. One of the reasons Jesse Jackson exploded as a candidate in 1984 and even more so in 1988 was because there were a lot of working class people, multiracial, multi-ethnic, who knew that they were in the fight of their lives and they wanted somebody to fight for them at the highest levels of our politics. And Jesse Jackson, to a much greater extent than any other candidate, articulated the need for that struggle.
Keep on pushing, everybody. There's work for us to do. The push is on. The job is up to you. Your latest book is what, John? You've got 2 out.
It's okay to be angry about capitalism.
And then Big Pharma.
What's that?
Big Pharma. Come
Oh,
on.
yeah. Oh, you can be. Look, you don't stop with your anger at capitalism, but it's an overarching reality that then allows you to fill in a lot of other blanks.
You got to come back on and talk about that because these prescription drug prices are out of bounds. This is crazy. Loving you, John Nichols from The Nation magazine. Everybody, go get that New York Times bestseller that he and Bernie Sanders wrote. It is fantastic. It's okay to be angry about capitalism. It's okay to get on out here and make a new system. Love you, everybody. God bless.
Thanks so much.
Love you, John. Love you. Dwight, you
Hey,
want to
it's
comment on what
total
you
pleasure.
heard? Oh, absolutely. You want to comment on what you heard? Because many people thought that the unions had been busted. Now of course, Jonah knows nothing about this because Jonah was not born
Oh,
then. No, Jonah wasn't
yeah,
even
but
a
you know
thought
what
in his
Jonah's
parents. He wasn't even
you
a
know what
thought.
Jonah's strength is though?
What?
Jonah's one of these young people who actually is powering the rise of the labor movement because it's the young
Absolutely.
people who they may know the history because they've studied it, but they don't have to know the history. They can look at their current experience. They can look at where they're at right now and say, boy, we got to make this better.
I'm so proud of Jonah. I don't know what to do. I know I sound like his auntie. I know he's like, what? Wait a minute. I'm just trying to be on the show. I'm
Oh,
like,
no.
oh no, I'm so proud of this young man. I don't know what to do. You know, when I see young people like Jonah, I go, wait a minute. These seeds took root someplace, and
That's right.
everything's going to be all right. Really, really. I
I
love
apologize
you, John.
because I have to depart, but I want to say what an honor it is always to be with you, and also what an honor it was to listen into the conversation before, that honest conversation where people were bringing different perspectives and deeper history to the discussion about the Middle East. I spent a tremendous amount of my life covering Israel and Palestine and a lot of time on the ground there, and I can tell you, everybody has a deeper story, right? There's so much more to it than comes out in most of our media. And what I will leave you with is that when I was there a lot in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a moment where you saw Palestinians and Israelis, Muslims, Christians, Jews, other people of other religious faith coming together and saying, you know what, we can actually work together. I saw that in real time, in real life. And I know that is within people in that region. I know the divisions now are so brutal, so overwhelming, that people can sometimes lose sight of that. But I will tell you that there is a way to a future where Muslims, Jews, Christians, people of no faith can live together in the birthplace of the Abrahamic religions. It is possible. And that's what we've got to get to. We have to return to those touchstones of understanding, and we're going to have to tear through a lot of history, right? And a lot of bitterness and a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. But as I tell you, I've seen it. I've seen it in real life, and I continue to see it. And so as awful as this moment is, I am hopeful for a future that is defined by peace and by justice in the Middle East. And with that, I have to go, but I've
Sending you so much love. And they can share the resources. How about that? Because this is about the resources as much as this is.
Don't even get us started on that.
No. It's the money. I'm with the kumbaya,
water.
but I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
This is about the money, and people can share all of that, and because they are still trading the gas while they are waging war. That's what's happening.
Right. And can I just also tell you too, in that region, people have a better understanding that water itself, just water is a fundamental resource that people fight over. And so when you get to that level, that's why you need fundamental cooperation between people, because you can't have one group of people taking what is essential to life. That doesn't work. That doesn't make a functional society.
Unbelievable. I mean, very quickly, as I see the hostages being released, well, hostages, prisoners, they're all the same. I mean, because, most of the Palestinians haven't been charged. They say, they were only able to use the restroom like every 90 minutes. There's no water over there. These hostages are living like Gazans. They couldn't get any food. They're rationed food. They were rationed food before October 7th, everybody. They can't shower. There's no water. There's no water. So I hope these families,
information coming through.
Well, yeah, but I hope these families that receive these hostages say, well, wait a minute. I hope it occurs to them that they were not being mistreated per se. They were having to live the way the Gazans live. That's what was happening. Now, I mean, look, when Susan Sarandon tried to say something like that, they dropped her from her agency, but she's going to be all right. But this is ridiculous. Stop. I love you, John. I know you got to run, but you can have the last word.
I do. I'm afraid. my last word is carry on the conversation. You're doing it as it must be done. And I think that people are hearing things on this show that brings them to a deeper understanding. And wherever they end up, right, whether we agree or disagree on these issues, we got to come from a place of shared knowledge. And that means deeper, more complex, more difficult conversations. And I honor you for presiding over them.
Oh,
for
bless
making
your
them
heart.
happen.
And mutual respect. That's what we have to do. And continue to tell people about the show, John. So thank you
I
so
sure will.
much. Love you so much.
Love and solidarity.
Much love. Many blessings. Jonah Karsh,
Okay.
Dwight McKee, are you still there?
I'm still
I
here.
am.
Okay. Well, Jonah, you can comment on anything you wish. So, what would you like to say before we go?
I don't have a ton to add. Interesting to hear the UAW conversation. I mean, I'm just thankful to be on the show. Thankful for the platform you're providing us. Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful to have been as well to just have been raised with values that center the least of us, that center injustice in the world, and just how central that is to me. So all credit to my folks and to all the people that helped me come to where I am today.
I give all credit to your folks too, because to be fair to others who don't share your value system, you're functioning in the world with courage. So many of us function in the world with a lot of fear, Jonah. So I really the older I get, the more, oh boy, I'm turning into my dad, which is like, oh no, because he understands people and forgives people. I was reading an article about him not too long ago, and they said one thing about Jesse Jackson: he never holds a grudge, and he never does. He just doesn't. He just keeps it moving. And I just think that it's important that we understand the people. It's really very important just to understand the people who come from a completely different perspective, because oftentimes they come from a space of fear, and people are fearful, are hurtful, and harmful, and dangerous. I had someone with whom I worked closely, a very, very powerful person. And this person, politics, very right wing, yada, 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 all of that. But a wonderful human being. And it turns out, and could be very harsh, just had a very, very black and white view of the world, and this. But it turns out that this person's father used to beat them relentlessly, Jonah, mercilessly, was cruel. And sometimes this man would look at me like, wow, this is how you feel? I'm like, but I wasn't treated that way. I mean, my father was very, 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 very kind. And one of the things that he absolutely does not like or countenance is smallness and cruelty. That's his biggest turnoff. If he has a pet peeve, and he doesn't have many, that's it. Cruelty. He can't abide that. He cannot. And I'm appreciative of that. And so I appreciate, please give my love and regards to your parents, to your family, to this community from which you have sprung, because it's very clear that it's a courageous community and you're not functioning out of fear, because that's really the difference between you and your opponents and our opponents. You're not functioning out of fear. You're clear that if you take a hit, you can get up and you can survive it. I'm clear that Dr. King won. Whoever killed him on that balcony, and no one who was there is convinced that it was James Earl Ray, and certainly they do believe that it was a government that killed him, ours. He won that day. All they did was make him bigger. The crucifixion made Jesus bigger. I mean, that's Mohandas Gandhi became bigger when he was assassinated. This is what you did with Mandela. You made him bigger when you put him in prison. Lech Walesa, when you broke up the union, you just made him bigger and you made him president of Poland. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. You can kill people, but you can't kill ideas and the highest ideals. It just, So I mean, Dwight, your thoughts today? You're always giving us so much wisdom.
Well, the two things. One is on the union issue. Is the thing that is underreported is the fact that the companies can share the profits. If they've made enough money, then it's not a real stretch for them to want to share the profits. If they not want to share those profits, it's just selfishness and greediness. The people who are actually doing the work, the people actually putting the labor in, the sweat and the tears in, should have a right to share in the profits from these companies. It should just not go to management and ownership. And so most of these companies made record profits, and they need to have a mindset to share that. Same thing in terms of what's happening in Israel. Is the country is resourceful enough and wealthy enough that they can share the resources in the country. One nationality should not have a need to dominate everything. The water resources, the food resources, the health resources, the education resources, the land. There's enough there that everybody could share and have some equity and have a good quality of life. It is only the selfishness, only the presumption of a group of people, relatively small a group of people, that tells them they have the right to complete domination. And that's a sickness, that's an illness that has to be addressed. And then lastly, I was very encouraged today with some of the callers, is that the humaneness that we have for many people, even the people that are not directly related to us, and our proximity to Washington gives us an advantage that nobody else has, and that we can pressure. We're in the belly of the beast, and we can pressure the beast to make adjustments. We can force Biden. We can force those people who are giving energy and resources to this humane situation. We can force them to make adjustments. We can show up at the Democratic Convention and close it down. We can show up at the George Washington Bridge and close it down. We can vote, our consciousness rather than our wallets, and force them to make adjustments in behalf of people who are not in a position to force them to make adjustments in their own behalf. And I say to the young guys, like our Jewish young brothers, or the sister that called in tears, that is our responsibility, is to use that of the sympathy and the proximity to force them to make a difference.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that Miss Deborah called in today, and I hope that she left feeling some comfort, because when I heard that catch in her voice, that almost made me cry. I didn't want to hear that. But a lot of people are in a lot of pain about a lot of things, and so these stories bring out the things that are bothering us. I mean, it's just, there's a lot going on with everybody. So everybody, let's really become compassionate toward one another, because we don't know, as Reverend Thurston said at the top of the show, what your elephant in your room is. Everybody's got something they're dealing with, something that has them in pain, something that they're battling. Everybody know. I remember, Dwight and Jonah, when my mother made the decision for my brother Jesse to go to boarding school, military school specifically. Everybody was saying that he was hyperactive and he was hard to manage. Da, 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 da. My mother said, no, there's more to it than this, but I also know he's Jesse Jackson Jr. And in the 70s, Jonah, my father, was so controversial. We had the Chicago police were outside of our house, protecting our house, but we also had private black security inside. And one of the Chicago police who drove my father around had actually been sent to kill him. And he confessed to being part of what they call the Red Squad. I mean, that's how we lived. But we also had hostile teachers. Now, my mother did not let me know in real time that this teacher or that one didn't like my father, so they were giving me a hard time in class. But is someone else on here? Oh, Dynamo Dave, stay right there, honey. But I remember my father strenuously objected to my brother going away to boarding school. My father was only home maybe a day or two a week. And he would always walk through our rooms just to see. Let's put Dynamo Dave, you can hold on one moment because we can hear everything. He would walk through our rooms just when we were asleep or about to go to sleep and give us a kiss. And he said, "You don't know what it means for me to be able to walk through this nice, warm house, big old warm house, and see all of my children, resting and in bed and well." But what I did not know was that neither of my parents, Jonah or Dwight, ever spent one night under the same roof as both of their parents. Ever, ever. My mother never spent a night under the same roof as her mother and father. My father never spent the same night under the same roof as his mother and father. And as I got older, and it was something they never ever discussed with us, but they had completely broken a cycle, you know? And so I was past 40 when my father said, "Oh, yeah." So for me to come home and for my son not to be home, he said it was traumatizing for me because I really depended upon coming off the road and being able to go through go through your rooms and to see all four, then five of my children in one place. And so when we went to college, it became a real thing. And because everybody else but me ended up going to boarding school, holidays were always sacred, but they were sacrosanct. I mean, when is your last final in college, Santita? Oh, it's Friday afternoon. Okay, Friday evening, you're on that plane. Now mind you, when you're in college, I wanted to run up to Ann Arbor with my friends who were at University of Michigan, or my friends who from Howard who were going to Michigan, and we were going to hang out for a couple of days. My father really didn't want that. He wanted us at home. Even if he left town to go to work, he wanted us at home. And now I understand why. And so I'm sharing that with you so that you can understand everybody's got a story. More often than not, you don't know it. And so we just need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and understand what people's stories are. A friend of mine told me, someone who I've known all my life, Dwight, and he leaned over to me while we were sitting with our whole Push family. He leaned over. He said, "Well, so and so is not my dad." Wait a minute, Dave. We can hear you.
For the next 5 minutes.
Dave, we can hold on one second. He leaned over to me. He leaned over in my ear, Dwight, and he said, "So and so is not my dad." Now, this is a man I've known all my life, and I've always known him as his father, as this man's father. And it blew my mind, but then it explained a whole lot about his family dynamics. You just don't know, everybody. So let's just be cool. Dave, you've been holding. What's your comment, sweetie, before we go?
Oh, hey, good morning, Sweet Sunshine in Chicago. Hey, I want to say, I want to vote you guys, your show, as the talk radio show of the year. You have the best people on as guests. I learned so much from you guys.
Oh, bless your heart.
And when you're not there, you don't have this panel. It's like, oh man, there's a vacuum, or what do you want to call that? But anyway, so I want to acknowledge that and say I'm thankful and so grateful you have this platform and that you bring in all this esteemed panel of great guests. The other thing I want to say is, unions, they kind of help us protect our children. We've got, this child labor. There's a big, thing going on in the U.S., as you well know, of child labor happening, like kids running forklifts in warehouses. Mm-hmm. And if everything was unionized, that would not occur. And back to your other guest, talk about profit sharing. Would it be possible to say, hey, if you're going to incorporate as a corporation, you must profit share among employees? That would be a requirement. Could Congress pass such a law? because after all, a corporation is just an abstract construction.
Well, Dwight, what do you think about that? Would that be government overreach?
Some would say it's government overreach. I like the power in the hands of the workers themselves, because I think it gives them more leverage. I think if you legislate it, you really lock them in. But I think, in certain kinds of situations, but I think with the power being in the hands of the workers themselves, they know what's comfortable for them. They know what's legitimate for them. They are fair enough to understand that they need to take some money and reinvest it back in the company. They need to take some money and invest it in the stockholders who need a return on their money. I think that they are fair enough to understand all sides and to be flexible in their negotiation. So personally, I like to leave that in the hands of the employees and employers and let them work it out, battle it out.
Ashley King from Memphis believes that you have a point. And everyone has, I must say, the Morning Stars have given thumbs up to you, Jonah, to you, Dwight, to Mark, who's left us already, to the whole panel. They've really appreciated hearing your thoughts today. It means a whole lot, which is why, I want the platform to be used in this way. And Jonah, know you have a home here. Just
appreciate that very much. I really do have to run myself, but I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. And I can't wait to have you back.
Of course.
Because I have to
Thanks again.
Calling Aaron in the middle of the night. Aaron, find someone, please. Sending you so much love. God bless you, sweetie. Right. Bye-bye.
Talk soon. Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody. Love you so much, Alex. Thank you for a great show, Dwight. Dave, Dynamo Dave, sending you much love. Dwight, thank you for being such a wonderful mentor down through the years. Just in so many ways. I can never thank you enough for all of your guidance. You are an absolute jewel, and I'm just blessed to have you in my life.
Shalom. Thank you very much.
I can say that on behalf of me, Jesse, Johnny, Yusuf, Jackie, you and my mother, your cut buddy in conspiracy theories. Oh, but that's not it. They just know how this thing works. So they know ain't nothing happening out the blue. Okay, nothing. So love you so much, and I'm sending you all so much love today. And thank you, callers, for calling in, and continue to keep those calls coming in. But have a great, 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 great day. Morning Stars. Go to SantitaJackson.com. Let me know what you think. We're going to be adding elements to it throughout the week. All right, SantitaJackson.com. Sending you so much love, everybody. Bye-bye.